The question here is Internal Affairs covering up for this police officer? Are they helping him falsify Mostafa's case? Absolutely. Because what's happening here, every time Mostafa goes to a bond hearing, the prosecutor repeats what the investigator put in the original report. What am I talking about? Let's listen to Prosecutor Sarah Sami and what she says in court during Mostafa's bond hearing. Now, it's been 2.5 years. Mostafa had not had court. The prosecutor refused to take him to court, refused to put his evidence on the record, and refused to take Mostafa to court. So he sits in a county jail without trial for over 2.5 years. And every time he goes for a bond motion, the prosecutor repeats the falsified statement of the police officer because he never corrected the initial report. Internal Affairs is helping this investigator continue to lie about Mostafa and is helping the prosecutor lie about Mostafa because, according to the prosecutor, she's not lying. She's not lying about Mostafa if she's simply repeating what the investigator said. The Internal Affairs never corrected. Let's listen to what Prosecutor Sarah Sami says in court. All right, so if you go to YouTube under Not Another Boring Podcast, I've got a playlist. I've got a playlist of all Mostafa's body cams, the body cams that are sealed by the county. I've leaked them on the internet, and I made a playlist on YouTube. It's called Police Body Cam. So if you type Not Another Boring Podcast on YouTube, you'll find this playlist with all the body cams. And in one of the body cams is an audio of the prosecutor where the prosecutor repeats the police report that we just read, that Robert Drum said Mostafa told him that he was arguing inside the vehicle. So if you go to timestamp, let's see. This is timestamp 34 and 16 seconds. All right, 34 and 16 seconds. Let's listen to prosecuting the judge in court.
Called the defendant in the day following this crash. You know, Mr. Stevens insists that this is nothing but an accident. I would contend that this is nothing like an accident. Defendant indicates that he corroborates that there had been some sort of argument between him and the deceased victim. In regards to the crash, he says that something just happened. And then later says, I was driving straight as she was crying because something about she wanted to go to the graveyard. She didn't have a driver's license and her car wasn't working. Your Honor, I can tell the court the defense vehicle.
Prosecutor Sarah Sami says Mostafa told investigator Robert Drum that he was arguing with Dorothy inside the vehicle. Let's listen to Prosecutor Sarah Sami one more time before we go into the police report. Now, this is crucial. What Prosecutor Sarah Sami is doing in court, She's only reading off the police reports that's never been corrected by Internal Affairs. Internal Affairs gave the audio when we made a complaint about this investigator that he falsified Mostafa's statements and that Mostafa never said he was arguing inside the car. Internal Affairs took the audio and gave it to the same investigator that falsified the police report. And this investigator conveniently said, I can't hear the audio. Now, and the police report never was corrected. There is a supplement report, but the supplement report says that this investigator can't hear the audio. How convenient. The Internal Affairs gives the audio to the same investigator that falsified the police report. And then you have a situation here, because the police report was never corrected, the prosecutor, Sarah Sammy, can sit in court and repeat the statement that are falsified. Let's hear Prosecutor Sarah Sammy one more time what she tells the judge.
Investigator Drum called the defendant in the day following this crash. You know, Mr. Stevens indicates that this was nothing but an accident. I would contend that this was nothing like an accident. Defendant indicates that he corroborates that there had been some sort of argument between him and the deceased victim. In regards to the crash, he claims that something just happened. And then later says, I was driving straight as she was crying because something about she wanted to go to the graveyard. She didn't have a driver's license and her car wasn't working. Your Honor, I can tell the court the defendant's vehicle was inspected thoroughly by a master technician from the investigation. 200 every tenth of a second, not a rapid deceleration, and only dropping 1 to 2 miles per hour per tenth of a second, which is consistent with the crash scene and consistent with the dash camera that the court viewed. Investigator Drum called the defendant in the day following this crash. You know, Mr. Stevens indicates that this was nothing but an accident. I would contend that this was nothing like an accident. Defendant indicates that he corroborates that there had been some sort of argument between him and the deceased victim. In regards to the crash, he claims that something just happened. And then later says, I was driving straight as she was crying because something about she wanted to go to the graveyard. She didn't have a driver's license and her car wasn't working. Your Honor, I can tell the court the defendant's vehicle was inspected thoroughly by a master technician from the St. County Police Department. A thorough inspection indicating that there was nothing wrong with the vehicle, nothing that could cause the vehicle to go left into un.
Okay. So Prosecutor Sarah Sammy tells the judge that there is a conversation between investigator Robert Drum and Mostafa told the investigator that he was arguing with his girlfriend inside the vehicle. And she's repeating the police report. She's reading directly from the police report that Robert Drum originally wrote that was never corrected. Now, Julie Carey reported on that the police department sent us a letter that the police department, the Internal Affairs, signed by the chief of police, Peter Newsham, admit that the officer violated department policy.